Okay, this is exciting. I know the majority of you, and I'm just coming here to share some storytellings, not here as the expert on the iPad whatsoever. So I'm Jenny Leeper Miller, and I am the master teacher over at the laboratory school on East Campus. And I've been there about 10 years, and it's exciting to me to continue to add new practices and new resources. And the fun thing for me is that half the time my students, children and big students, know more than I do, so I get to learn from them also. So some of these practices are actually learning from student teachers that we've been put into place. So at the laboratory school, for those of you that don't know, we have 2 classrooms. One classroom is 18-month to 3-year-olds, and the other classroom is 3-year-olds to 5-year-olds. And I'm over in that older classroom. And so I have the 3 to 5-year-olds. And so about 3 years ago, we were gifted an iPad for the classroom. And I immediately was, of course, my early childhood hat went on, and I know that American Pediatrics states that children should really only have 2 hours a day of screen time, and that's total time. And what they say for early care is that they should only have a half an hour in an educational setting of screen time. So that's just always in my head that I know children are getting screen time at home, because I have 2 children. I know that they're getting that 2 hours or hour. And so for me to integrate the iPad into the classroom, I just had this sense of kind of worry of not wanting to use it so much. And so it's just been an evolving kind of resource that we've integrated into different learning environments or different resources. So I'm going to share those stories with you today. But first we have a quick little quiz for you to take. So I'm going to show you a series of pictures. And what I'm going to focus on today is using the iPad as language development and extending children's vocabulary, because that's how I've seen it be most useful in a teaching sense. And so right now, if you just have in your brains or on a piece of paper, jot down all the words that you can about this image. What is it? What does it look like? What might it feel like? And I'm going to go kind of quickly. What might it taste like, smell like? So there's the first one. Here's the second one. What is it? What is it going to feel like? What might it sound like? Is it familiar to you? Have you seen it before? Have you touched it? Do you have questions about it? Do you like it? Does it scare you? Does it hurt? Does it bring back fun memories? Okay, so what was the first one? Somebody said a grasshopper. How do you know that that's a grasshopper?
Just because it's the back of the body and then the hind legs.
Yeah, so you have background knowledge to connect to all those different schemas in your brain to tell you, I think this belongs to a grasshopper. It's green, it has the pattern of a grasshopper. And so as adults, we have those buildings and those connections in our brains to connect to it. But children don't always have that for that language development. So that's our role as the teacher, is to give them those connections when they come to you with a question of what is this? What is, and you're questioning back to them. Okay, what was this? A tire, absolutely. Do you think it's to a tractor or a car? Do you think it makes a big track or a small track? Like a big, maybe? How about this one? Butterfly. I think the first one was the hardest one, maybe. A bee. Football.
Corn.
Yeah, I wondered if that would stumble some of you. So it's corn on the cob, the husks down to the bottom part. So again, just sharing that I am in no way an expert to using apps, to using it in the classroom. I just am a creative thinker of how we can use these things with children, and I'm evolving every single day with it. And the children are teaching me also. So like I said, 3 years ago, it became a new resource in the classroom. And what I found is that, of course, children were saying, can I play Angry Birds? Can I play a game? Can I play a game? And that immediately was just not a way that I wanted to use the iPad in the classroom. And so what I started modeling was to use it as a resource for language development, for answering questions that they had. And so it really encouraged children to be investigators, to ask questions, to seek out their answers to it. And also it kind of enhanced their ability to be independent and build their own vocabulary. So they not only had to come to a teacher, but they also had another resource. Let's check the iPad. And then finally, it created these opportunities for them to kind of reflect and to come back to their findings on the iPad because it's readily available. And so I'm just going to share some of those stories here. And so the first one is recognizing that the iPad was becoming kind of almost like a person. And so here's a dialogue. Is it a cricket? No, that's not a cricket. It's a grasshopper. It's a cricket. It has long back legs and it jumps. Well, let's check with iPad. So not the iPad, but iPad. It now kind of has a name. It's like a person. And so they use it as kind of that resource, which I like because they are kind of investigators of their own answers. So my thought about that language development, which I'm sure the majority of you know some of this background, that children use language to think through their problems and to answer their questions. They know that words represent objects, so they label things all the time. And a lot of that is that cognitive process, those thinking skills that also connect to that language. Oral language, including the grammar, it's the ability to define a word. So not only is it just a chair, it's a blue chair sitting on the floor. So it defines their objects of what they're finding. And the oral language helps support later on literacy skills, which we all know about. So we'll jump into kind of the fun examples here. So the question is, what kind of leaf it is? Asks Ruby, and she's 2 years old. So raise your hand if you know, don't blurt it out. Raise your hand if you know what kind of leaf this is. So even the teacher might not even know, but here's a 2-year-old coming up to us saying what kind of leaf it is. And we want to find out an answer for her, and we want to build that vocabulary for her so that she can now label the leaf that she's so curious about. Something about our Ruth Staples family is that our children are each broken up into family groups, and their family groups are named after leaves. And so we have the ash leaves, we have the we don't have the ash leaves, we have the maples, the cottonwoods, and the oaks, okay? We used to have ash leaves. So here's Ruby. She finds this leaf, and she's my daughter, so she knows that I have the iPad for a resource. And so she comes to me and says, what kind of leaf it is? And I say, I wonder, Ruby, let's take a look. Let's check the iPad, because I'm not quite sure either. And so we get on Google Image, and she starts searching through Google Image, and she says, I maybe think a maple leaf, because she's a maple leaf in her little group. And so another teacher comes along, and she helps Ruby find the maple leaf in Google Images, and Ruby kind of tags along those images to try and investigate how she can label this leaf. So we already know that she knows it's a leaf, so she has that vocabulary. So she places the leaf on top of the picture displayed, and she's trying to find a match. And the way that she describes that is that don't match, not the same. So she's trying to describe how she can find two that are the same. So next, another expert joins us, and this expert is a child. And Julia can spell. And so what she does is she finds kind of some of those images on Google Image, and she notices a picture right away that matches Ruby's leaf. And so she shows Ruby the match. So she typed in leaf to be able to find different kinds of leaves. And then Julia noticed the match for Ruby, and it matches. We found it. Look, same. And so she labels that. And then Julia, the teacher helped Julia sound out ash. Ruby, you found an ash leaf. So Julia actually becomes that language model for Ruby and labels that for her. And then Ruby replies back with the label and that expanding vocabulary. So Ruby says, an ash leaf, it's so pretty. So we see her successfully using that. So a teacher comes up and she comments on Ruby's findings and says, Ruby, you found a leaf. And Miss Ruby, she replies proudly, I found an ash leaf. So there's a great assessment too, that she built onto that expanding vocabulary. It's no longer just that leaf, it's an ash leaf now. So I don't know if you use Teaching Strategies Gold, I know some of you are very familiar with it. So that just shows that language development of using expanding vocabulary. And so now Ruby has that connection that leaves can also have a label, but they're not all the same. And so that's that one. Here, of course, brings us into Angry Birds. Children at Ruth Staples, with the help of a little boy named Eddie, were extremely interested in Angry Birds. He got to play it at home. He got to use it as a reinforcer at home also. And so he brought in these ideas about Angry Birds. And all of a sudden our block area was Angry Birds. Our sand area was Angry Birds. And all of these representation of Angry Birds came into play. And so one way that I kind of encouraged children's vocabulary and language was questioning their words that they started to say. So they started saying catapults and slingshot. And I know that some of the teachers here who've worked with them actually did some catapult studies and some slingshot studies with the children. And so Eddie kind of pulled the iPad and started to look at Angry Birds to be able to represent it in the sand area. So this is going to show you through a series of pictures. So EJ says, make a catapult, you know, that thing that looks like a Y and throws the bird. And Elias says, no, I don't know what that is. And so Eddie says, here, look at it. So he has the iPad at this time. And he says, it looks like this. And he shows his friends on the iPad kind of what it looks like. And Elias, that is a slingshot. So he's correcting his friends with the vocabulary, saying, I think that's a slingshot. But in comes EJ, who has another kind of idea and connection about it. And he says, Elias, it's the same thing. A catapult throws things into the air, and so does the slingshot. So now they kind of have this ongoing, question about, is the catapult and slingshot kind of the same thing? And so here's Eddie. If you notice his pants, they are Angry Birds. So that just kind of shows you the level of commitment to his interest of Angry Birds. So Eddie, of course, is the expert here. So that's why, he has the iPad, and here he has his little crew members setting up and representing the Angry Birds. And while this whole play is happening outside in the sand, there's this dialogue back and forth about catapults and force. How fast will the ball go? How far away do we need it to go? And so that vocabulary is definitely there, going back and forth naturally between the children. And then the iPad then is creating that resource for Eddie, which he knows it very well, but for the other children that might not, to go back to and look at it. And he sat here the whole time, kind of being the foreman to check and make sure that they were setting it up the right way. And so that created that opportunity for the children to investigate on their own. Were any of you there for that? No?
Yes.
I wondered. I can't remember if that was this summer.
I think it's this summer.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe so. Okay, so another tool is, of course, just the videoing on your iPad. What we know about children and how they learn best is through repetition, that they're able to see things multiple times. So we have this wonderful opportunity of the Confucius Institute coming every Tuesday to teach the children Chinese. So I can't be much help to that lesson because I don't know Chinese. So how Erin, the other master teacher in the younger classroom, and I have kind of supported that is by videotaping a lot of these lessons now, and then we can play them back to the children later in the week, or just even when they start labeling their body parts, which is what they're going to do here in the video, and I'll show you. And so this is Valentina, who actually speaks Spanish, speaks English as a second language, and is now learning Chinese. And so that's pretty fascinating to me that now I'm able to support her, Chinese, even though as an English speaker, by this use of the video. So let me go ahead and play it, and I'm going to be quiet because the sound is not very loud. So the Chinese instructor is saying the word, and then the children are repeating it back. And so really one lesson of that gets the children exposure, but then our kind of contribution is to follow up with that through video of this. And you can see that Hawk and Valentina are repeating back exactly what the teacher's saying. So now to give them repetition of that language, we hope will help them continue on with that learning of the Chinese language. How many of you have used Ustream before? So Ustream is kind of an online streaming of video that you can do. And what we did is there are the Decorah Eagles, which is Decorah, Iowa, and there's a video camera on an eagle's nest. And so what we did for our science area is we had field guides to different birds, and we had them displayed along with paper, and then also had the iPads there just displaying that video camera, or the online streaming of the birds. And so we did it on our iPad. The younger classroom displayed it up on their classroom walls, and so as the children would come each day, there would be the eagle streaming up onto the wall for them to check and see, and there were eggs when we were observing these Decorah eagles. And so that created that opportunity for language to happen, for the children's journaling. So each day they would come in and journal and write and discuss about what was happening. So here's Emmett, and he's talking about, drawing his representation of the bird, and he's noticing that, birds have beaks, they have talons, they have feathers. Other children, why aren't the mommy birds laying on top of them? So the birds had flown away and the eggs were there by themselves. So it sparked that language of asking questions. Meijing, the wind will make them cold. So she's showing that empathy in her language of taking care of those birds. The mommy and daddy might be eating, said Teacher Corn. Their birds will get sick. So again, there's two opportunities for the children that talked about that emotion and that empathy that we often share through language. So here's some resources for live bird cams, that www.raptorresource.org, and that has all of those different bird opportunities or raptors to look at. So the Decorah Eagles, which is the one that I'm showing you here, Eagle Nest Cam, Missouri Turkey Vultures, there's an owl box that you can watch, and then Eagle Crest Wildlife is just a variety of different wildlife that they capture in their place. And it's a free app for iPads or iPhones. And so I want to show you an extension that kind of came off of the use of this iPad. And that was the children investigating eggs and birds. So here's just kind of an idea from the teacher. We're going to learn how eggs turn into chickens. And EJ says, chickens aren't birds, that's silly. Chickens are a type of bird. There are lots of different types of birds, says Teacher Heather. Yeah, lots of colors too, says Meijing. And they have wings, says EJ. And beaks, says Emmett. So there's back and forth dialogue between the children, building off of their language about this idea of birds. So something else that we do at our laboratory school is include different types of representational tools for children to build on their language. So of course the interest started from watching the birds, and now we're going to use some clay to represent. And so while creating the birds out of clay, "What kind of birds are you making?" the teacher asks. "My bird's a songbird," says EJ. "Mine's a chick bird." And Eddie made a porcupine bird. So his representation is very creative. So this led to some science integration of thinking about how many objects do you think can stack on top of eggs before they can crack? How many do you guys think? A whole kid can sit on top of an egg before it cracks. So here's EJ in this middle picture. You see him sitting on top of those books. So we first encouraged children to estimate. We took eggs and you just, of course, you blow out the inside yolk stuff. And you put a piece of tape around it, and then you can just cut it across. And then you put them flat with the round part top, and we put all of these items up on top of the eggs. And then EJ sat down on it for about 3 seconds, and then it collapsed. So eggs are very, very strong. And this led from that question about the eagles being out of the nest and how strong are the eggs, and aren't they going to break, or isn't someone going to come, and are the eagles too heavy for the eggs? And so this was an extension on the children's questions of asking whether eggs are strong or not. So that, of course, was very interesting to the children, and we had to get several eggs to continue to try that out. Okay, I'm going to take just a second to kind of set up my iPad here so I can show you some different kinds of apps that we've been using just recently this semester in the classroom. So just give me a second here. Okay, let's take this out. I wondered if I had to press input. Yay! Okay, so I have a quick list that a colleague and I put together for some resources for our student teachers. So I'm going to pass that out to you today, and then you can put, let me just give you one. Yeah, you're welcome. You can put a star by the ones that I'm going to introduce today. So the first one is called Educations. And this app gives you the opportunity to make stories out of different videos and different pictures that you take with your children, either in the app or on your iPad. So I'm going to play one for you. We have a pumpkin patch that we planted. Uh-oh.
This is our pumpkin story.
I'll hold it up maybe.
Pumpkin with a flower.
Pumpkin with a flower.
A pumpkin with a flower. It's flowering. Things that's happy. Big giant sounds better. Our pumpkin patch. Our pumpkin patch.
So you're seeing the end product of really a longer process that we took. So the children were able to document out in our garden the growing of our pumpkins. And so a long time, we're building this vocabulary and this story about our pumpkin patch. And so this didn't just happen in 10 minutes. It seemed a bit rehearsed because we thought about phrases that we wanted to talk about our pumpkin patch. So they definitely had it well thought through about what they were going to say about each slide. What I really like about the education is that it's really interactive. We saw drawings that the children got to do, so it connects them to also those pre-writing skills too. So the next one I'm going to show you is Berkeley's observations. She's pretty quiet, so I hope you can hear it. And this was just from, this was a quick one done in 5 minutes actually before I even came here of some pictures that we documented about insects. I see cricket.
Maybe it's a grasshopper.
What is it again?
What do you see?
A worm
And we find worms.
underground. Praymantis had a brain.
Had a brain sac. It actually had an egg sac. But it had an egg sac on the top there. Okay, so this is that educations. Let me get my notes out really quick so I can tell you what's next. Okay, next is speech journal. Have any of you heard of that before? Okay, let's show you. So,
The speech journal.
thank you. This is just images, so still images that you can capture on this speech journal app, and then children can narrate or tell stories about. And so here's that worm grasshopper that we found outside that was supposed to be, the grasshopper was supposed to be food for our praying mantis. And so Elias is telling you a story about that. Can you guys hear or not? Yeah? Okay.
A worm with a cricket were by each other because we thought they were friends, and so we wanted to feed it to a praying mantis friend, lobster, except Jenny tried to catch it, except it hopped away.
So he said, except Jenny tried to catch it and it hopped away. So, this is really great also with children that might have speech delay, that then they can hear themselves back and continue to build on those language skills to hear themselves. And so I know a lot of our children love, of course, to see themselves, hear themselves. So that was a worm. Let's see. Our next one on here I'm excited to share is called Felt Board. And so this one does cost money. I can't remember how much. $2.99, but it's well worth it as a teacher who might be connecting to literacy books, using felt boards. You can save them all. So here's one that I did really quickly with 5 little monkeys jumping in a tree, teasing Mr. Alligator. And so then the children, it can be even interactive. I glued them all down, but you could move everything on here. There's so many options over here that you can choose from and do your own felt stories. And I'm going to show you one that a child did here. If I can switch back over. Let's see if it's going to go back. Okay. So like I said, felt board allows you to kind of choose your own pictures and create that representation, but also you can use it with children. So here's Leo, who's 4 years old, and he's writing his own story. He pulled all of these items over there throughout all the choices, and he says, "One upon a time, a knight was looking for a duck in a river, Papa's river. He found the duck in a flower group, and he was eating the flowers. Isn't that funny? The knight likes to eat corn on the cob, but the butterfly was eating the corn. Isn't that funny?" The end. So again, just those creative opportunities for children to practice and extend their languages and connect to, what they do. Leo likes to go to the Papa's River and see ducks, and I don't quite know where the corn on the cob and the butterfly come from, but that's his creative thinking. So those are just a few apps that we've just began to work with children in our classroom. And it makes me feel better about that screen time because it's supporting literacy, it's supporting language. And then too, that little part of the Angry Birds, it uses the children's interest. So you know that they're gonna be that much more excited to be interested in language and literacy. I wanna show you one more that I don't have up here. It's called Sock Puppet. So we all know that children love to hear themselves. So sock puppet here. You have your puppet, and it moves its mouth whenever you're talking. And so the children then you can press this right here, and it's recording what I'm saying right now. And then you could stop it, and it's saving it.
Right here. And it's recording what I'm saying.
And I'm stopping.
Oh my gosh.
And the children absolutely love to hear their own voices there in this kind of comical way. So that's called Sock Puppet, and that's free. And again, too, it has all these different kinds of, all these, these different kinds of puppets. So you could have a zebra. You could put him in messy room. And let's not do any of that stuff there. So here it's holding on, we're setting it up, and there he is in a messy room. So you can make up a whole kind of creative language story with the child talking and narrating, and then it talks back to you as you move your mouth and such. So that one's a lot of fun too. So I want you guys to share just here in this last few minutes, maybe some apps or some exciting things that you heard today, or whatever you have used in your practicum settings or classrooms. Does anyone have anything?
We did a cool writing one. I'm in a kindergarten classroom, so we're learning to, write all their letters and numbers. And there was one, let's see, I think I have it. It's called Little Reader for Kids, and then you can trace it. So it might be good for the older classroom.
Little Reader for Kids. Great.
And then you can trace all your uppercase and lowercase.
Awesome.
And then you have shapes and numbers.
Yeah, that's great. That just made me think of our sign-in one. So Touch to Write, this one isn't free. It has a price on it too. But every morning our children come in each day and sign their name in, and it's just on a piece of paper and they sign. So this is just another way to do that. So here's Graham. Is it just like this? And so Graham would sign in by, and you get to choose whatever you want to write with. So let's say, maybe I want to write with ketchup. What I really like about this app is then it shows them how they wrote it up here. And it makes you do the correct form
You
also.
have to start at the top, and
Yeah,
then if you
absolutely.
pick up it,
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and give you my email address, or it should be available to you also. So you can email me your fun ideas that you go away from this. It's jleeper, LEEPER 2 @unl.edu. And thank you so much. It's been so fun sharing.